Good evening, everyone. We are so glad to have you with us tonight, even a few of you who have come here a little bit early. My name is Charlene Margot, and I'm co-founder of nonprofit The Parent Venture that brings you this program, the Parent Education Series, now in its 19th year. We are delighted to have with us tonight author Kirsten Jones of Raising Empowered Athletes.
Thank you, Charlene. I'm so excited to be here. It's such a delight. Even if we can't be together in person, I will do my best to bring my energy to you through the screen and share with you a little bit about my journey. I believe that one day we will all be looking back. I actually just reached this milestone. My third child just left for college 2 weeks ago. But as most of you who are probably listening are in the middle of the journey, in the middle of the sports parenting journey, and you feel like this is never going to change. I'm going to be doing this and being a part of this excitement for many, many years to come. But quickly, you'll see you get to the other side of it, and you're going to be looking back and telling a story about the journey that your kids had in sports. And even more importantly, your kids are going to be telling a journey about what they remember about being an athlete and growing up. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I came to doing what I'm doing. I grew up in Montana, Missoula, Montana, playing every sport under the sun. Whatever month, whatever season, you just played what was in front of you. There was never any expectation that I would play in college, probably like most of my peers. Yet when I graduated, all I wanted to do was play college volleyball. I ended up walking on at San Diego State University, having a miserable experience there. Shocker. I had never been to the school. I'd never met the coach, but then transferred to an amazing school in Virginia called William and Mary. Played there for 2 years and had the best experience, to the tune that 30 years later, I'm still in touch with many of those teammates, and that coach I speak to almost weekly. She was in my wedding. Coaching can impact and change lives for the rest of their life. It's such an important part of what our kids are experiencing when they do sports. So when I joined Nike in Europe, I was there for 10 years in Europe and then at world headquarters, and started having my own children. And here I am working with all of these amazing athletes. And I'm looking around, I believe when you get pregnant, everyone hands you to this book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. And you think, this is awesome. I am going to be the best parent ever. Because if you're a parent and you've read through that book, I did it 3 times with every pregnancy, you know exactly what to do in the moment. But 4 or 5 years later, you get to kick and chase, and you're standing on the sidelines, and there's somebody standing next to you going, you're not doing this rec thing, are you? Like, we're doing club. Hey, we're going to Sweden this summer. Have you gotten a private coach yet? And you start to have this, physical reaction and thinking, oh no, I remember feeling like, am I doing this wrong? Where is the book? How do I know how I'm supposed to go on this journey? So I believe there isn't a single parent out there that's trying to screw up their kid. Of course not. We're all doing the best we can from where we are with what we know. And if you are in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt liked to say, then we all need to support each other and learn from one another. And that's what my goal with my book is to help. I am not a sage from the stage. I'm a guide from the side. I'm just somebody who's been in the trenches as well, has made plenty of mistakes, hopefully learned a few lessons, and now get to help parents and their athletes as well go through the journey themselves. So I'm going to touch on, a few different topics, your role as a parent, what your athlete can do. I'll touch very lightly on the coach's role. We could spend days on that, I know, and I go into that more in the book. And then if you are raising an athlete that wants to play in college, that has that dream and desire, that's a wonderful thing. And so I'll lightly touch on getting recruited. But how did we get here? How did we get to a $37.5 billion business that is youth sports? The pay-to-play market that long are gone are the days where you just signed up for the team for $30 and you played the season of softball like I did here in this little photo. And your parents could have cared less, ride your bike home. I hope you have fun at your game. Well, I kind of have a theory around how this and when this shift started to happen. So in the 40s and 50s, about 24% of women worked outside of the home. By the 70s and 80s, that number had doubled. PS today, that number is close to 90% of dual income families. So we go from moms being home, being with the kids, organizing play dates, being available for them to come and go as they please, to kids being home alone. What are they going to do? At the same time, 1979, Adam Walsh gets abducted in a Florida mall. 38 million people turn on their television to find out what a scary place we're living in now. It's not okay to send your kid to play out in the street. It's very dangerous. Also going on at the same time, there was a study done, a nation at risk. We were no longer raising the most intelligent, the highest scoring children on the academic rosters. All of a sudden, we're falling behind academically as well. And then there's this little station that starts, this little channel that comes online in the early 80s called ESPN. Now I can turn on my TV and I can see sports all the time. You see Tiger Woods and Nadia Comaneci and and Gretzky and Serena Williams. And all of a sudden, we have this shift building like a frog in a pot. I don't think it happened overnight, but then you have dads going, well, hey, we need something to do with the kids. I'll coach the baseball team. I'll coach the basketball team. Again, all with the best interests of their kids. They start jumping in and helping out with the sports. But as we start to ramp up through the years, we get to this place where we now have 8 and 9-year-old leagues where the dads have spreadsheets and there's drafts and the parents are so over involved in what the outcome of the 8U soccer team is. I had a mom on the phone the other day from Indiana saying it was even happening. Was mentioning the story true story that's in my book about a family that hired a plane to fly over their son's baseball game in Pennsylvania to say, fire Coach Smith and Coach Kowalczyk, not because we didn't like the coaches, not because the team wasn't winning, but because their kid wasn't getting playing time. And this mother the other day said, oh yeah, we just had that here in Carmel, Indiana last week. Somebody hired a plane that said, Carmel ball is daddy ball, right? So it's happening every day in every way. And unfortunately, it's only getting worse. As I mentioned, when we started, we have these ideas about who we think our kids are going to be, and we get excited. We see these stars on TV and we see potential in our kids. But when they start to get into the system, we realize how competitive all of it can be. And I talk a lot about that. I believe that college cheating scandal of 2018, 2019 was the same thing as what we're seeing in youth sports. It's parental over-involvement. Again, with good intentions, but with horrendous outcomes, to the point where the kid says, basically, you're taking away all of their self-worth. The message you're sending your child is, I don't think you are enough. I need to take over. One little example story that I have in the book is when we were living in San Diego, California for a couple of years. I'm a new mom. I want to get involved. So I show up for the back to school picnic meeting with the 10 other moms. And we sit down at the Panera for the coffee for my first grader, and all the moms are chatting. Did you do the book report? Have you finished the book report? Are you done with the book report? And I thought, oh no, we're supposed to have a book report for this meeting? No, Mrs. Cunningham, she wanted the book report done. And the other moms start chiming in, oh yeah, I've already finished it. Yeah, it's done. So I go home to my little first grader and I said, Parker, I hear you have a book report. I don't know. Have you read the book? I don't know. Well, if you'd like any help, let me know. I'm good. I got it. I'm going to go outside and play. 3 weeks later, there's a back to school night or some type of, parents are in the room. And Mrs. Cunningham has all the mobiles hanging from around the room. And I walk over to the corner and I find my son's with globs of glue hanging off of it, with crayon, with misspelled words. And she comes over to me and she's smiling. And she says, some parents don't think I can tell who did the work. And she points to the one next to Parker's that's in perfectly spaced, no errors, no misspellings, with the images cut out. Like, she's like, I think I know what a 6-year-old is capable of. I'm with them every day. So if you have a kindergartner, or if you have an 18-year-old or anywhere in between starting at birth, we need to allow them to do the work, to learn how to go through these stages of getting the grade that they want and not taking over for them. So how does that relate to sports? It's a very fast changing game. And what we know is we want to raise athletes for life. And by that, I mean those who are still active at the age of 23 are more likely to remain active as adults. We don't get to choose our outcomes, but we get to pick our habits. And that's why we sign up for these activities. So they see themselves as athletes. So they learn how to use their bodies. So they get that high of winning, but they also experience what it's like to not win, or like it's not to get chosen, or what it's like to have a headwind. We know if they play sports, they'll suffer less depression, less anxiety, less overwhelm. But what we're seeing more and more now is that sports specialization is happening way too early. It's causing mental, physical, and emotional breakdown. You now have kids that are so anxious, they can't, they're not able to enjoy. When I sometimes ask kids, like, so what do you love about volleyball? You're 12. I don't know. Like, they're not even seeing what the point of the sport is. And I've been doing it for 5 years, and it's what my mom signed me up for. And what we know about sports specialization or delaying it, like in the NFL, 91% of the guys who were drafted played multiple sports. The more sports you can play, the better. I'm going to have I'll go a little bit further on that a little bit later. But to touch on how competitive it's getting, this is actually a statistic from pre-NIL, pre-COVID, where the transfer portal wasn't as wide open as it is now. Less than 7% will go on to play at any level. I think even right now, getting recruited out of high school is probably closer to 2 to 3% because of the transfer portal. There are so many kids in there. Over 20,000 kids were in the transfer portal last year, and that's impacting the high schoolers' ability to even get recruited. Even more alarming is that 70% of young athletes are dropping out of sports altogether by age 13. And girls are dropping out of sports twice the rate boys are. Why? Because they're not having any fun. Why? Because we are sucking all the fun out of it. Because we are making it so competitive, so early, all about the trophy, that they're not even allowed to experiment, to explore, to try one sport one season and try one the other. I have moms come to me. I coach little 9U volleyball. One mom in near tears saying, I'm so sorry. I said, why? She said, well, I know we're really late. I said, late to what? She said, well, I know she's already 9 and we're just getting started. No, she's experimented. She needs to try everything. I didn't start playing volleyball till I was in high school. And P.S., by the time I got to Division I volleyball, they told me, you're actually a really good athlete. You're not a very good volleyball player. But that's okay. We can teach you how to play volleyball. We can't teach you the athletic side. And I believe whatever level of athleticism I had was from doing so many different things, so much of my childhood. We see their bodies are breaking down. They're going into early retirement. There's now videos about kids, putting up their retirement videos at 15, at, even younger. We want to keep them enjoying the ride. So that's a lot of bad news. Thanks, Kirsten, for that. It's a real downer, right? So why are we doing this? There are so many good things about sports. In fact, that's why I'm doing what I do, because of the impact that it had on my life. The leadership, the teamwork, learning to collaborate, learning how to win and lose. The executive functioning, so the frontal cortex is open, wide open, with girls until 18 to 20, and sorry, but with boys, sometimes 25, I've heard upwards of even 28, which means they don't understand what it means to how to make a decision, what's going to impact downstream choices. They don't have the tools yet. So what we need to do as adults is give them the guardrails. So while they're building that frontal lobe, they can learn the skills that they need to be successful. And P.S., this isn't just about sports. This is about life. Some of the biggest things that I believe you get out of sports too are the ones that nobody ever talks about. Resilience, grit, gratitude, the understanding of how lucky I am I get to play this sport. So you may ask, okay, great. So when is it a good idea to specialize? I would say nobody under 13 should be specializing. If you are in, I think I live in Los Angeles where, there's so much pressure and so much competition. You see it less and less here. When I go to smaller places like where I grew up or, some of these more rural areas, people are allowed to do 2 sports. Bravo. Keep doing it. Again, less burnout, less overwhelm, better athletes, better results. But if you're under 13, you're raising an under 13-year-old, I would say focus on the 3 F's. Make sure it's there for them to make friends, to have fun, and to learn the fundamentals of the sport. Parents, avoid the 4th F, FOMO. Yeah, but they're doing this. Yeah, but they're on that club team. And one mom called me from Baltimore one day and said, went into this big story about we're trying out for club and we're going to miss it because we're going to go on this vacation. And I'm really, really upset. Am I going to really put my child behind? And I was assuming she was talking about a 14, 15-year-old. And I said, how old is your son? And she said, 8. And I said, first of all, you need to focus on, you only get 18 summers with them. 80 to 90% of the time we get to spend with our kids, for me, is already over. It's through their 18th year. Less than 10 to 15% of our time we get to spend now with them is almost gone, right? So enjoy and prioritize what your family values are and make those decisions. Maybe you're going to miss the 30-second soccer tournament of the year. Okay, pick wisely. Don't miss the championship game, but pick one that says, you know what, we're going to do this as a family because this is what's right for our family. And one rule for trying any sport or activity, I say, as long as it's safe, as long as there's nothing untoward going on, we start what we finish, or we finish what we start. So if halfway through the baseball season, I hate baseball, awesome, buddy. We're just going to finish this season. And as soon as we're done, you can try something new. And then when we quit, when we finish it, okay, great. Now what would you like to try? It doesn't have to be a competitive sport. Not everybody wants to be competitive. Maybe they just want to do something more physically active, but not be competing against somebody. I had one girl I was coaching, her dad was a college lacrosse player at Boston College. He so wanted her to be a volleyball athlete. And most of the time she was there dancing on the sidelines to TikToks. And, we laughed about it. I said, maybe she should take some dance lessons, right? It's not for everybody, and that's okay. We need to parent the kid we have, not the one we wish we had. So I've been giving you a lot from the adult's perspective, from the parent's perspective, but I think it's very important for us to hear from the kids as well. So here's a little, I hope you can hear this. Please let me know if you can't, Charlene.
No sound, Kirsten. Maybe.
If I play bad,
There we go.
thing, and if I play well, it doesn't really matter if they compliment me on how I play. I just I don't know, I prefer my parents to, not talk as much. I can hear them cheering me on, and I'm thinking in my head, just shut, I'm trying to focus.
My mom yells in Spanish, go, go, go.
My mom just says, use the backboard. You should use the backboard. I get angry because it annoys me. I'm kind of embarrassed. It tells me to get in the position that my coach told me not to get in. I'm like, well, no. And then she's like, get in your position. I'm like, no.
I get a little tense when I have a certain score to get. And she's like, you gotta get that whatever score. And I'm like, I don't like it when they try to push me even more, even though I'm trying really, really hard. Coming from the coach's mouth is kind of better, I feel like, because your parents are there to support you and your coach is there to help you, you know? You just start screaming, Valentina, run faster, make a basket. But but I just start going slower every time when she says that.
The other people were like, wow, that mom was like really wanting her kid to win.
In my inside, you can't see it, but I'm inside saying, sometimes I just look into space.
Try to listen to them and then do what they say to like, so they don't start yelling again.
I don't really want them to give me that much advice because then I might forget it all.
Sometimes I get nervous.
When they yell and nobody else is yelling. Sometimes it can embarrass me. Like a lot.
Wait. What's going on? We're just trying to do this, but you want us to try harder?
Well, I am.
I'm not going into a game not trying my hardest. That'd be like messed up. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
Sometimes when they try to get the ball in basketball, you kind of think in your head that they're kind of like gonna push you and you're gonna fall and hurt yourself.
They don't need to like always be like telling me what to do like every minute of the game. They kind of just gotta let me play.
I love when you say it like really nice. I got it, Mom.
I'd like to look back and I'd like to see you like smile or like give me a thumbs up. Mom, I wish you would be a little bit quieter. Say like you play good and like you can get them next time. When they smile and say like good job.
Mom and Dad, thank you for loving me. I love
Be my supporter.
when I'm upset, my mom and dad cheer me up.
Sometimes I forget about all the work that they do for me.
Be my biggest fan.
We need to level up. I want you to know
I need big hugs.
I love the snacks that you bring me. It makes me happy when you always encourage me.
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Please just be my mom and dad. Yep, that's it.
So a good friend of mine, Asia Mape, runs this website. I love to watch you play, and I love this video so much. I cry every time I see it because I think we can all relate to that. And I have some stories in the book about the car ride home, and there are kids that actually, sad story. I remember my son, his best friend had played a bad game, and he came over to him and he said, "Can I just walk out to the car with you?" My son's like, "Yeah, sure. Why?" He goes, "Because I know I'm going to hear it the whole way home, and I just want 10 minutes of peace." Right? And like, doesn't that break your heart? Because you know the dad has the best intentions, but think about even just having that awareness of what do they need to hear in this moment. And the car ride home is not the place to talk about the other team, to talk about any other player, to talk about the coach, to talk about all the bad things, right? And I recently added this slide, and it feels to me like there are a lot of the obviouses, but these happen at every single youth sports event I go to. But I like to focus on the positive. I'm wired that way. So do cheer for everyone, but cheer louder for the other kids. You can always see the parents that you're like, oh, I know whose kid yours is, right? Cheer for everyone. And for the ones that are like getting the one opportunity to go in, that's always amazing. And encourage your child to advocate for themselves. I'll get parents that say, well, she's only 8, so I need to go talk to the coach. No, you don't. Give her the tools. Hey, let's role play. What do you think? Well, I don't like, that I'm not playing. Okay, great. Let's pretend I'm the coach. You're you. What would you like to say to me? Like, you're giving her life skills so that she learns how to advocate for herself. Ask them after a tough loss. They know. How can I support you right now? Would you like to talk about it?
No. Like, okay, great. Let me know if you want to tomorrow. Usually by the next morning over breakfast, you can ask again, hey, I had some thoughts. Do you want to hear? No, I'm fine. They've moved on. We usually are perseverating on the game and that turnover and that time let it go. Say, I love to watch you play. Man, that was fun. And if they didn't get a play, I love the role you have on this team and how supportive you are. Focus on the characters you want your kids to build. I'll talk about that a little bit, and not the ones that are lacking, right? Extra credit. I love to challenge myself to do this. Find somebody on the other team after the game and single them out and say, wow, you did this really well. I see you. I have memories of people doing that for my kids, and I still remember it, right? It made that big of an impact. Don't cheer against anyone else. We always like, yay, they missed. Yay, they missed their serve. Yay, they missed that pitch. No, we want to be positive. I was in Kansas City this last spring with my daughter for a volleyball tournament, and I walked past a court and this girl was sobbing, and I overheard the dad yelling at the wife and the daughter saying, why did I even bother coming? It's a waste of my money. Next time you can just go spend my money on your own. Ugh. What is that girl going to remember about her high school volleyball career? There might be some highs, but I bet you one of those lows will stand out as well. Don't spend the car ride home blaming others, talking about other players, about the coach, about you think my kid's better than that kid. It's not relevant and it doesn't help. And never go post on social. And you would think that, again, this would be an obvious one, but it happened this year as well that I was witness to. And it's so damning and demeaning to the others. We gotta realize these are just kids. They're doing the best they can as well, like they said. So 2024, UConn wins the national championship in men's basketball. Everybody goes crazy. And I just love that one of the first interviews that came out about what are you looking for? Like, how do you recruit? Dan Hurley chose to talk about the parents. So have a listen.
Landscape now in college basketball. How are you continuing to get kids who buy into that?
Yeah, I think there's measurable talents you have to have, right? The height, the speed, the skill set. But we spent a lot of time really focusing on the parents.
The parents.
Yeah, on the parents. Are they going to be fans while they're on campus of their son, or are they going to be, or are they going to be parents? Are they going to, hold them accountable? Have an expectation that when something goes wrong, that it's not the coach's fault, that it's their son's got to work harder, he's got to do more, he's got to earn his role. We've got a real old school culture here of accountability. I'm an old school coach in terms of the tone I take with my players in practice, the expectations with effort, the focus on winning and we over me.
Like, what does that mean?
Have they played on 7 different travel teams? Have they transferred to 4 or 5 different high schools? When you talk to the parents in the recruiting process, are they constantly complaining about the coaches after a bad game? Or are they, sending you a text or you having a conversation, where their son has got to do more, he's got to play harder, he's got to work on his skills. They tell on themselves, they drop hints, and you've got the wrong type of kind of people in that inner circle around your players. They'll sink your program.
They'll sink your program. One player.
Yeah, the locker room is so important. The personalities, in that room, what they're saying in that room after a tough loss.
Are they pointing fingers?
Yeah, are they beginning to create, divisiveness inside the locker room and, becoming coach killers and program killers and culture killers? Our ability to avoid those type of players and to pass on some neon talent, to get more of a winning player.
Pass on neon talent. You mean you're passing up players who are playing at the top of the game because you're just not confident?
Oh yeah, you see players that with the way we do things, as well as the focus that we put on winning, here, those 5 national championship banners, and the 11 on the women's side, you prioritize winning here as a head coach, or you won't be coaching here very long. And we've passed on, players with incredible measurable height and athleticism off the charts, to bring somebody in here that is going to give us a better chance to win, and somebody that, if the losing does start, is going to help you be able to respond.
I love that video so much because I also think of the opposite side of that. And when my 2 sons were getting recruited, I remember speaking very vividly to one D1 coach, and he said exactly what Dan Hurley said, which is I passed on, as Dan called it, a neon talent, a 5-star, to take the kid that had all of these 10 attributes. These are things that require 0 talent. So we talk a lot about, well, I'm not the tallest or the fastest or the most athletic. Well, these are the things that every teacher, every coach, every person in every relationship will value. And if you can, these are character qualities that coaches look for. And if you want to give your kid a gift for life, it's taking these 10 and making them a part of who they are. I always, when I work with teams, I have them do this as an exercise and give yourself a score out of 10. What would you give yourself right now about being on time, about what effort you give? We get to make a choice every day in how we show up. The number one thing every single time I do this exercise that gets the lowest score is body language. They all hold their hand up and say, yeah, when I miss a point, when I make an error, I think they feel obligated to let everybody know I'm bad. I feel bad about this. And I said, we need to focus on what are those things that, okay, I made an error. The best teams, the best athletes, they make an error and they reset. I call it good Ted Lasso quote, be a goldfish, right? 5-second rule. In 5 seconds, you reset and you're on to the next play. You can't tell whether the best play of your life just happened or the worst play. Teaching kids these skills are what's going to make them very, very healthy, happy adults. And as I mentioned, we had Steve Kerr on. He said so much. I would, encourage you to check it all out. He's an amazing human being, 9-time NBA champion. But he talked about the power of all of those character skills, and it kind of wove into what he looks for in his athletes. And one of the things he said is, when I see people who have played multiple sports, you see a very special level of talent.
I think it's great to play multiple sports and have different teammates, different coaches, use different muscles, see different games. I think they translate for each other. I think some of the best passers that I know in basketball were soccer players for a few years. Mm-hmm. Steve Nash played hockey growing up, and he was the first NBA player I ever saw who would purposely dribble behind the basket. And he took it straight from hockey because you take the puck behind the goal, mm-hmm. and you make the goal. You have to figure out where you are, and you change all the passing angles of the puck. So he started doing that in basketball. It's 100%. And I asked him about it. He said, yeah, I came from hockey. So I think playing multiple sports can actually make you better in whatever one sport you end up concentrating on. So I'm
big proponent of multisports. So parents, that's great. She's saying be multisport athletes. What is our role, and how do we help them navigate this, particularly if they are doing more than one thing, right? And the biggest thing we can do is model. They're listening to almost nothing to what we say. To them, it's peanuts, but they're watching what we do. How are we, and I call this the balance wheel exercise, and I like to do this sometimes with my clients too, to let them score themselves. Are you getting enough sleep? Sleep is a superpower. They know that if the kids are not getting at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep in middle school, and 6 to 8, 8 to 9 in high school, they're going to be sleep deprived, which is going to cause lower scores, lower attention spans, and huge deficits in performance. Are they eating the right things? Are they getting hydration? Are they getting some downtime? I mean, the number of kids that say, the coaches will say Friday, okay, club season's over, high school season starts on Monday, enjoy your weekend, right? Balancing that is very hard. I'm not saying I have the answer for it. I wish I did, but I am saying we as the parents need to make choices with them. And again, it's a family discussion. All right, let's talk about what our priorities are and allowing them to be a part of that discussion. Because what we're seeing now is really an epidemic. This book just came out last fall as well, and it's excellent. She's really talking about an epidemic of mattering. Kids don't feel like they matter. And what it's leading to is this sense of lack of agency. When we were growing up, there's a Harvard study, 85-year Harvard study, the most successful people, 85, through the course of the 85 years, were those who had chores. Why? It gives you accountability. It gives you responsibility. It gives you a sense of pride in, oh, I did that. Whether I got an A on my test or I flunked it, whether I made the top team or I didn't, I am still a very valid contributing member of this family, important member of this family. And now, because of our schedules and overscheduling, kids feel like my only value is if I get the top score or if I get onto the best team. But what if those aren't going well? Not what if, but when those don't go well. They start to, it erodes their sense of confidence, which means they take less risks, which means they get into these funks that they can't get out of. So having them do a part-time job, having them have chores, even at 2, 3, 4, 5, we can all have responsibilities. And when you look at it as an opportunity for them to have some autonomy, I had a gentleman on the podcast yesterday who's military, and he said, at 5 years old, I give each of my kids $5 and take them to the mall and say, go get me change. And he said they kind of like, oh, okay. But what it taught them was, I don't have to have all the answers. I get to go be creative. And when one came back with change and another one never, eventually he said he wandered back, but he couldn't find somebody that would give him change. They're learning something just by a simple task like that. So these are all tools for a lifetime. These are the nuggets in the book that I talk about in the toolbox and what I work with athletes on and one-on-one and with teams. These are all habits and rituals and choices we make that help us self-regulate. And if we adults can learn how to do this, and then we can teach and share it with our kids, it starts to lead to not if, but when the wind blows, when we don't know if it's going to rain or it's going to, thunder, that we can handle the headwinds. I won't go into all of these now, we don't have time, but these are some of the best tools that if you just watch the Olympics, if you're watching the Paralympics, they're all talking about these things because this is how they get out of their head and into their body. By journaling, you are the writer, the director, the producer of your life. You get to write down what life you want to have. So you are creating your future, your present. And when you realize how powerful that is, I love it when the light bulb goes on and the kid's like, wait, I get to make a different choice today? Absolutely. Am I saying that it's always going to go perfectly? No, that's not the point. The point is I'm coming in with a plan every day and I'm setting myself on intentions. Get up, you write down even 3 gratitudes that you have or 3 things I'd like to do today. Parents, you can do this too. Walk the dog, finish the project, do the, pay the bills. But when you have that sense of accomplishment, that's what helps you make progress over time. And that's the most important thing is not getting bogged down in, I need to be winning every day. That's not how the world works. A third, a third, a third. If you're winning a third, if you're neutral a third, and sometimes a third of the time it's not going well, that's life. So much of what we do is habitual. It's things that we've automated because we have so much stuff coming at us with phones, with social media. So our subconscious is driving 95% of what we do. So what drives our subconscious? What we're putting into our conscious. What choices are we making on a daily basis? What are we reading? Who are we talking to? We are the combination of the top 5 people we spend time with. Who are we listening to? Even if it's somebody you don't know, but somebody you admire, if they're in your head, if they're filling you with, oh, you've got this, you can go do this, that then ignites this idea of, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to reach out to that person today. I'm going to call that coach. I'm going to go have that tough conversation with that friend. That's what's building that sense of self of, I've got this. When I worked at Nike, my husband also was in Nike. He was on the brand side, I was on the footwear side, and he got to work with Kobe. And right after Eagle, Colorado happened, Evan drew the short straw to go down to LA to tell him that we weren't going to do a signature shoe. We, Nike, weren't going to do a signature shoe with him. And Evan said, tough meeting. Kobe was definitely, probably in one of the lowest of the lows. But he said, even in that moment, what was so beautiful was I started asking him about, my husband was a basketball player too. So it was just so fun to get to pick his brain about how he thinks and sees things. And he started to unpack about what he does. And he said, for me, I'm motivated by haters. He goes, I just go ahead, tell me I can't do it, and I'm going to show you I can. So they actually started going back and forth on like what? What do you mean? And he said, somebody tells me you're past your prime, you're mental, you're stubborn. I will take whatever they say and I will assign a workout to it. Kobe would do twice as many workouts as the rest of the Lakers would do because he knew that would give him the physical advantage when he got on the floor. I'm not suggesting your kids should be doing twice as many workouts. We know they're already overdoing it, but just even the mental thing, not being on the social media, not listening to, the FOMO of what everybody else is doing, but creating the path that you want to be on, talking to somebody that's 1 or 2 steps in front of you. My son, who's playing in college right now at Colgate, the kid that was player of the year for Colgate's now playing pro in Europe. I happened to meet his mother. I said, wow, you should talk to him. He's been where you are. My son was like, that's amazing. So they've been WhatsApp chatting back and forth. And it's like, he's giving me this great advice, Mom. And he's doing exactly what I want to do one day. It's beautiful. And by the way, Tucker, who's over in Europe, he's getting just as much out of it. He's giving back. He's getting this a chance to help somebody else. And that's what this whole journey is about. So thinking about what habits are you feeding? What do you need to do less of? Sometimes you need to let go of some people who are holding you back emotionally. They're negative. You ever sit next to that parent at every game? This is going to suck. This team's better than us. We're going to lose, right? Go stand at the end of the baseline. Go move yourself away. Separate yourself from that cancer. We don't need that. We need to be focused on being around and surrounding ourselves with the people who are doing the things we want to do. Because there really are, there's another whole segment here we could spend days on talking about the coaching. And I get that call a lot. Well, the coach hates my kid. Well, my kid's had a bad coach 3 years in a row. And really, there are 2 main types of coaches. There are transformational coaches and there are transactional coaches. John Wooden was a transformational coach. He cared more about his athletes as people. He taught his players how to put their socks on at the beginning of every season. When Bill Walton played for John Wooden, Susie Walton tells the story that he would have the whole team sit down and learn how to put their socks on, because if they put those on right, then they wouldn't get blisters, right? He was very involved in wanting to help them break down the game versus, throwing the chair and being that transactional coach where it's all about me. It's about my legacy. It's about how I look. And that's what I'm most worried about. If you can find the and they're not going to always have the transformational coaches. And actually that's okay too. I mean, I had that in college as well. I learned a lot from that coach who didn't care for me and a lot about how I don't want to adult. So sometimes the gem is in the dirt. So finally, around recruiting, I won't go long. These are my 3. My 2 boys are still playing basketball. My daughter finished high school this past spring and said, I'm done. And for the longest time, she had all this guilt about, mom played, my brothers are playing, my dad played in college. I should play a sport. No, you shouldn't. This is your journey. My athletic journey is over. I mean, yes, I'm still working out, but I'm not competing. You need to do what feeds your soul. It's totally fine for you to pivot. And I'll never forget that day in Spokane, Washington, when we're there at a volleyball tournament for the 52nd time that I said it, and the penny dropped. And her eyes lit up and she got 100 pounds lighter. And she said, oh, thank you, Mom. Thank you for allowing me to make my own choices. Of course, I'm thinking, I've been telling you this for a long time. But when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So in recruiting, it's a long process. The kids chapter 2, whose dream is it? I think most importantly, You got to keep checking in with your kid. What they want at 8 or 12 or even 15 is not necessarily what they want at 18. Now they know more. Gosh, I don't think I really want to work out 40 hours a week and travel the whole season and miss half of my college classes. But getting to know what it is they want, and do they want to be in a big school or a little school? Do you want to be close to home or far away? What are your family's priorities? And what are your kids' priorities? Some kids will say, I don't care, I just want to wear the jersey. And some kids will say, no, I want to be a starter. I want to make sure I get in and become an impact player. On my website, if you are at that stage, I do have a free recruiting guide you can download that talks about all the questions you can ask. Because, this is what I did with mine. We actually mapped it out. We mapped out what are the dream schools? What if anybody from these schools called you? Wouldn't that be amazing? And then you start asking why, helping them understand why they're looking for what they're looking for. And by the way, it's like dating. I mean, you can't really know what you're going to get on the other side, but that's why it's important to cast a very wide net. And I don't care if you get a call from a D3, an NAI, anybody who texts you and says, I'm interested, they deserve a response and a phone call back and a thank you for your interest. As I mentioned at the beginning, the reality of it is right now with the transfer portal the way it is, getting recruited out of high school is very, very hard. Not impossible. And I'm not saying don't do it if it's your passion. I'm saying absolutely do it if it's your passion. And in fact, both of my boys ended up doing a post-grad year because neither of them had any interest out of high school. Neither of them had a place to land that fall, but they both said, Mom, I want to try it. I want to see if I can figure it out. So they both went the post-grad route. My oldest one ended up at Boston University. He graduated in 3 years. COVID was not easy, during that whole time. And he finished, and now he's getting his graduate degree and master's in business at a D3 here east of Los Angeles. He's having more fun than he's ever had. They won their league. They went to the Sweet 16 in D3. He's like, wow, I haven't had this much fun since I was 8. And my younger one went to a boarding school in Massachusetts, and then ended up getting as well 15 D1 offers, ended up choosing Colgate. As a freshman, was able to come off the bench and have some significant minutes, and the team ended up playing in March Madness last year. As Parker said, I got subbed in, I hit a 3, I had realized my childhood dream. I could leave. He said, I really just wanted to go back into the locker room. He goes, that's it, I'm out. It was such a defining moment. So I know that a lot of you probably have kids like that too, you see it in their eyes, you see how bad they want it. And we parents, that's all we want to do, right? Is support them on their journey. So I'll leave you with this. There's a little boy who finds a caterpillar and he says, Mommy, can I keep it? And she says, sure. And she gives him a jar and he puts it in his room. And a couple weeks later, the chrysalis had formed and he sees some movement and it's starting to break open. So she sees him flying past her out the door and, she's like, oh, what's going on? A couple minutes later, he comes back and he's sobbing. And she says, what's wrong? And he said, well, the cocoon was breaking open and I saw the one wing. And so I just wanted to help him. And so I tore it open for him. But his wings aren't strong enough. So he didn't survive. I think that's the perfect analogy of what we do in parenting, right? We're not trying to hurt them. In fact, we just want to help, right? I'm just going to break open the cocoon just a little bit. But the more you can catch yourself in that moment, allow them to have that moment so that they get the beauty and the gift of learning from it, and they get to make the choice. Ask them, gosh, that was hard. What would you like to do next? That is how we can empower our children so that when we're looking back on this one day and they're telling their story of their journey, you want them to have some of the happy moments to share. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And Charlene, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Kirsten. That was really incredible. And we have comments from people saying so wonderful, informative. You've taken us so many different places in this youth sports parenting journey. And I know I'm the child of a semi-pro professional athlete. I was married to a professional athlete. So what she's saying, folks, is real and true and so positive, Kirsten. Really, thank you. This was beautiful. Okay. We've got time for some questions and we have some great questions coming in. First of all, a couple people quickly would like you to identify what is the transfer portal.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. See, I am speaking a foreign language, right? So the transfer portal is when you're a D1 athlete, I think D2 too, but when you want to leave, excuse me, leave one school and go to another school. It used to be prior to 2021 that you would have to go get into this portal, i.e. say, I'm leaving this school. And then you would wait, you'd have to sit out a year, a whole calendar year, before you could commit to another school at the same level. During COVID, NC2A came out and they said, you know, it's not really fair making kids sit out. They've already been punished. So they took away the waiting period. So what happened is now kids are like, gosh, I'm not really getting the playing time that I want at this school. Maybe it's just a bad fit. Maybe I'll go get in the portal and basically see if anybody else wants me. But what's happening is, you know, of course, there are certain kids who have all the stats and who are the leaders and everybody wants them and they get gobbled up. But a lot of the kids that are getting into the portal didn't play, so they don't have any stats, so they can't get recruited. So over half of the kids that get in the portal, they leave you, and oftentimes leaving a scholarship because they're like, well, I want to go somewhere else. They'll go in there and nobody, you know, bites on them. And so then they're left to figure out, what do I do next?
Okay, thank you for that, Kirsten. We knew you would know. All right, thank you, parents. Again, some really good questions coming in. Vulnerable. This can be a really hard, very personal subject for parents, right? Here's a question we get a lot. What should you do when your kid wants to quit, but it's because the sport is challenging or the coach wants your child to try a different role or position? Again, the caveat here, parents, is if your child has a coach who you feel is not treating them well, that's a different story. We're talking here about child wants to quit, sport is too challenging. What do you say, Kirsten?
Yes, 100%. If it's, as long as they're safe and you know that they're just, they're uncomfortable, right? Is what's happening, right? We as humans like comfort. We like to know what to expect and we like to stick to what we know. That's one of the most beautiful gifts of sport. And so I would encourage you to have a conversation, and I like to talk about it in the 5 whys. So tell me what's going on. Well, I want to quit. Well, why? Well, the coach doesn't like me and he was making me play this other position. And you start asking the whys to get down to what the real answer is, because the quitting and the being in a different position probably isn't the real answer. It's really 4 or 5 whys down that it's like, well, I'm a little embarrassed because, you know, I don't play as much. Oh, well, what do you think we could do to help you get more playing time? Well, that would mean, you know, I'd have to work harder. I'd have to get more, I'd have to start to learn this other position. Oh, so are you willing to do the work? So start helping them lean into why they are trying to avoid it. And but all the way also help them understand that that's very normal, that they're feeling that way and they shouldn't be ashamed of it. I think a lot of these kids feel shame with the discomfort. And so they want to opt out. And that's where the quitting is coming from. Versus if he or she sticks with it and gets to the other side of it, do you know how proud they're going to be of themselves? Even if it doesn't mean that they are a starter or they become a star, but just that becomes something they get to put in their emotional bank account of, I did a hard thing.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you, Kirsten. So here's one kind of from a more difficult angle. Parent asks, is it wrong to get upset with my tween kid if they're giving kind of a half effort because I don't feel like it today? How should I, as a parent, respond?
You know, it's so hard, right? Because they just know exactly which button to push, right? And every ounce of your body wants to push back. So it's hard, but I would say when you're not in the moment of feeling like triggered, then we need to have the discussion about what do you think's behind it. In the moment of, you know, I'm going to say what I think you don't want to hear just to make you mad. And I know the response I'm going to get, nothing's going to get solved, you know, fight or flight. So cortisol floods the brain. Stress makes us stupid. You're not going to say anything nice. They're not going to say anything nice. Nothing will be solved. But giving it a minute, giving it, you know, after school, the next morning, let's go on a walk. I personally, I live in LA. I love the car because, you know, you kind of have a captive audience. So you don't have to look at each other, but you can have it as, you know, what do you think's going on? And allowing them to maybe just vent. The other thing I hear a lot from kids is, you know, and you heard it on the video, I don't want them to fix it for me.
Yeah.
I can do this if you let me. So a lot of times we shouldn't be sympathizing. We should be empathizing by listening. Empathizing isn't fixing. Empathizing is, man, that's tough. I'm sorry to hear that.
Such a good point, Kirsten. And I love how you say to parents, ask the questions, don't tell, ask. Such great
Hard.
advice.
It's hard because we've been there. I know this one. I know how this is going to play out, right? Like it's so tempting to dive in and yeah, I can help you here.
Right.
No.
Right. All right. We have come to the end of our time together, Kirsten. That was amazing. But I do want to ask one final question, and that is, what message would you like to leave parents with after reading your book?
Oh,
And parents, it's a wonderful book. Wonderful book. Pick it up.
thank you. I guess the biggest message is it's a wonderful journey. Parenting is hard. Don't get down on yourself. Be kind to yourself. I had a mom on the phone yesterday crying about her 9-year-old, like literally crying tears. She felt so upset with herself that she had gotten in a fight with a mom on the sidelines. She's like, I so need your help. We all make mistakes. Nobody's doing it perfectly. And the best thing you can do for your kid is go, wow, I really messed that up, and allow them to see you fail so they have permission to make a mistake.
Fantastic words to leave us with. Kirsten Jones, wonderful session today. Thank you, everybody who was on with us. Parents, we're going to put a survey in right now. We hope you'll take 1 minute to tell us what you thought. But again, Kirsten, thank you so much for a magnificent session, and best wishes to you and your book. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Good night.